Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, the Bay Area's premier author interview program. The title of today's book is Jack Wakes Up. It's a novel by Seth Harwood, published by Three Rivers Press, and Seth has been good enough to stop by. Nice to see you.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, I don't usually spend a lot of time on the backstory, if you will, like where did the book come from. But in your case, I find it absolutely fascinating, so I want to go into that.
Okay.
It says here, in 2005, you began writing your debut novel, Jack Wakes Up, and you're no stranger to the literary scene at that time. You had graduated from the prestigious Iowa Writers' Workshop. It's a lonely place, though, where Iowa is located, Iowa University, isn't it?
Iowa City.
Iowa City.
Lonely in what sense? Lonely in a lot of senses.
Yeah, I've been there, and it was, never mind, it was lonely for me. And just a few years before that, his short stories have been published in numerous literary magazines and anthologies. He got the attention from publishers for Jack Wakes Up. However, it was proving rather difficult to get that attention from publishers. So in July 2006, you did something that probably a few years ago you wouldn't have been able to do. You recorded a podcast of the entire book and posted it on your own website, SethHarwood.com, for free download.
Absolutely.
What made you do that?
Well,
I mean, it's the free part that surprises me.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff now about, the Chris Anderson book about free being the new advertising model. And basically,
right.
What I was looking at is that I had worked really hard to publish about a dozen short stories in those journals and anthologies that everyone looks to like they're the grand pillar of literature. And, nothing had come back from those. I hadn't gotten any feedback.
Read by 200 people now and then.
Less than 200. So I had done that and slaved hard for it. And for every one I published, I got my 2 copies, one for me and my shelf and one for my mother and her shelf. And I never heard anything back. And then I finally just tried publishing a story on the internet. And I all of a sudden started getting emails back from it. And people were reading it.
No kidding.
It was free for them to read it. They didn't have to hunt down something and spend $15 on it. So people were reading it and emailing me. And at that point, I had Jack Wakes Up, and I wanted to figure out a way to sort of build my audience online with the novel. And, at that point, I would have been happy to give it away for free in any way I could think of, but I didn't think that putting it out as text for free was going to get people to read it. It's just hard to read that much of a book or a whole novel on the internet on your computer. And so when I found out...
I think, incidentally, that's one of the problems facing Kindle.
Yeah. Well, the idea is Kindle is that you can take it away and just sort of curl up with it or something.
But in your case, you would have to stay in front of the large screen.
Yeah, I can't curl up with my laptop or any kind of monitor that I had back then. And so, I found out about people podcasting their books, and I'd always listen to books on CD during my car commutes and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I would take them out of the library. And so when I found out that I could read it out loud and distribute it through the internet, and people were out there ready to listen to these free books on podiobooks.com, I was ready to go. I mean, that was the answer to me for how I could put my novel on the internet in a way that people would be able to digest it.
And at that point, or shortly thereafter, I suppose, something called the Jack Palm's Crime podcast series was born.
That was the birth of Jack Palm's Crime. I started with Jack Wakes Up, and by the end of the book, I had a few thousand listeners who were clamoring for more. And as a writer, emailing me and telling me that they really liked my fiction. So, I had friends who knew of me as a writer, but that's not where my paychecks were coming from. And no one out there knew my work that I didn't know at all. And so now I had an audience that was out there all over the United States, around the world, and they knew my work and were emailing me, and it was great.
So there are books there now, like Jack Palms 2 and Jack Palms 3. Are they books?
Yeah. So after these people started to get excited about Jack Wakes Up, I realized that I had had a great time writing it and podcasting it. So I went out and wrote a second Jack Palms novel, put that out for free. People were listening. And then I went out and did a third one.
Wow. Wow. And then you're working on a fourth one now.
Well, I did a prequel.
The prequel. Or is that out?
The prequel has been out as a podcast. I started it in August, and I was actually podcasting it while I was writing it, which was kind of a bear. But I finished that in May, and now that's out as well. Young Junius.
Young Junius. Junius is a character in the book that has been
in Jack Wakes Up,
published in the old-fashioned way.
Right. They call it the Dead Tree version. Now Jack Wakes Up is out in the Dead Tree version in stores everywhere.
Now, how did you get from the podcast version to the Dead Tree version?
So my goal originally was to get all these podcast listeners that I could tell agents in New York about and say, I've got thousands of people who want to buy the book. They didn't really get much traction from my cover letters. So I worked with a small press called Breakneck Books who brought it out in a small edition. And all my listeners bought it up on the same day. It was Palm Sunday from last year. They bought it up. It went to number 1 on Amazon.com in crime and mystery. And next thing you know, I had agents emailing me the next morning saying, let's do this. We got to get this to editors.
In the next section, we're really going to get to the plot of Jack Wakes Up. But I do have one more thing I have to cover. So stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
Our guest today is Seth Harwood, who has a book called Jack Wakes Up, which is now out in the Dead Tree version, published by Three Rivers Press. Now, I don't know what the sequencing is here, but you did this podcasting on your own site.
Yep.
And now, is it not also available on something called patiobooks.com?
Yes, I was releasing it simultaneously on my site and on Patio Books. I've done that with all my books.
I see. And Patio's been around? Patio Books has been around?
Patio Books has been around since late 2004, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It started off with Scott Sigler, who's here in San Francisco, and a few other authors putting out their books, serialized. It started out with 4 authors, and now it's grown to over 300. It's basically a library system to house or hold these audiobooks that we're distributing for free. There's a donations form on Patio Books, and there's a great community on there of people who are trying out this new fiction by authors who are giving it away for free as audio.
And I must mention that if you do make a donation to this audio system, if you're on there listening, 97% of what you donate in the author's name goes to the author.
It goes to us. The money goes straight to the author.
Yeah, the other 3% is for their trying to run the thing.
Yeah. Evo Terra runs it out of Phoenix, and he's been doing a great job.
Chandler. Phoenix? No,
Chandler is pretty close to Phoenix.
Yeah, okay.
From what I understand.
There is some wonderful ways to launch books, This is one of the more interesting ones, but it also helps when you have a #1 New York Times best-selling author, the likes of Michael Connolly, who knows a little bit about this kind of book, saying Jack Wakes Up rocks. It's a fast, smooth ride on a highway not found on any map. Nice way to go. Nice way to go. Now, there's also someone else who likes your books, and she wrote this in the New York Times Book Review. It says here, the storytelling has vitality and a spirit of rebellion, giving us hope for the future of all these bad girls with dirty faces and bad boys on bikes.
Yes.
Giving away the very end of the book, incidentally, with that phrase, on bikes. That was Marilyn Stasio writing in the New York Times Book Review. And the thing that's interesting is that those are really two very, very important people. And Jack's story is, that he's an ex-actor. He's been drugged out.
He's gone through some downtimes in his life, let's say.
Yeah, he certainly has.
But he's cleaned up where we start the book, and he's sort of looking for an entry back into the world.
But the problem that Jack has, I think, is that he's bored with the Sausalito life.
Yep.
And he's looking for some adventure.
He's been spending about 2 years just going to the gym and working out and reading. And where we pick up the book from there, at the beginning, he's ready to find something that's going to be adventure. He's got to start making some money again. And he gets wrapped up with this friend of his from L.A. where he had made a big hit movie called Shake 'Em Down.
Mm-hmm.
And this friend wants to pull him in on a one-time drug deal that he says is going to set them up financially for life.
The rest of their lives. And this involves,
or at least a couple months.
This involves some very tough characters who happen to be Czechs.
Yes, some out-of-town Czechs who are here to buy a big chunk of cocaine. And then, as Stasio alluded to with the bikes, basically do an Easy Rider type thing where they drive motorcycles across the country.
They're going to drive across the country having a good time.
Exactly. What more would you want?
Yeah, they're going to start their good times in San Francisco at our clubs.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the other things that I find just a little bit strange about Jack is that he loves his ride. Now, when I say he loves his ride, he loves it more than he loves people. Because there are times in the book when people all around him are getting shot at and wounded and killed.
Yeah.
And this doesn't seem to upset him. But somebody puts 2 or 3 holes into his 66 Mustang Fastback K code, and he really gets angry.
You better believe it.
What's so wonderful about that car?
That's his car. Well, I think, in some ways that car is a throwback to when times were different in our country, and he's sort of a throwback kind of character. He likes the theory of those old simple times.
Mm-hmm.
He loves this car also because he bought it with the money he made from the movie, and it's the only thing that's left from that big windfall that he had and that success, other than people stopping him on the street and saying, "Hey, aren't you that guy?" And so it reminds him of better times for a lot of people, and it's also the thing that he's been able to work on, something that he's been able to improve himself, and it's his baby, all in all.
There's also another message about Jack that comes in and out of your writing, and that is that he's having an inner struggle in the sense that the violence he's getting into makes him feel alive and fulfilled.
Yeah.
Whereas...
alive. I don't know about fulfilled.
Yeah, well, alive for sure.
But he's getting to be alive again. I mean, he's been an actor. He acted in this Hollywood movie, and now he's sort of back in this situation and trying to insert himself into a world that he's not familiar with, and to work his way through this drug deal, he basically has to start acting on his feet in the real world. And so he's back into acting again, and he's kind of having a good time is the scary part.
Well, yeah, he's kind of being asked to act like the hero he was,
right?
In the movies. And, one could see this getting mixed up. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's exciting. He's going to the clubs. He's riding with the players. All kinds of stuff.
Okay. The action in Jack Wakes Up is nonstop, but there is a moment when Jack seems to let it all out. And we're going to share that moment with you when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It's Conversations on the Coast. We're talking today about a wonderful novel which is classified as a mystery, hard-boiled.
You bet.
Yeah. It's called Jack Wakes Up. The author is Seth Harwood, and the publisher is Three Rivers Press. And Megan Abbott, Edgar Award-winning author of Queenpin, says, combining the lean prose and propulsive momentum of classic pulp with a brash style and action movie bravado that feels utterly 21st century, Seth Harwood's exhilarating Jack Wakes Up reads like a long-lost Mickey Spillane tale as directed by Robert Rodriguez. How does that comparison make you feel? Is that nice to make you feel good?
It's great. I really admire Megan Abbott's writing. I love her books. She has a new one that just came out that I just bought. And, I think she's fantastic. And I love that whole image there.
Good. Now, action. That's what this book is all about. Nonstop. But there is a stop.
It's like an action movie between two covers.
Rolling. At one point, Jack finishes a call with Detective Sergeant Mills
Hopkins.
And I'll call you, Jack says, when I have something. He flips the phone closed and takes a drag from his cigarette. It's burned halfway down in the time he's been talking to the cop. Maybe he's going back to smoking, but he'll worry about that when his life returns to regular. Never going to return to regular. Right now, he's conning police officers to keep himself out of jail, making deals that involve putting his own ass on the line by going after mobsters and drug dealers, and he's past the point of no return. And that's, really underneath what's going on. And it bubbles up, I think, through all the action. And, that's a very nice thing. Now, one of the things I'm interested in is, will you continue to debut your fiction as audiobooks?
I will, yeah. I mean, well, I'm at a point now where I've already debuted the second and third books in the series. And so now my goal is to bring them out in print. I really like attracting my audience with some new fiction when a release is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So to have them on listening to me every week and have me being able to talk about before and after the content of the episode, what's going on with me, where the release is, it's a great way to connect with my listeners.
Yeah.
And line them up for action.
Now, a lot of people die in this book.
There's some killing.
There are some that live on.
Yes.
Like somebody I liked a lot, but turned out to be nasty, Maxine.
I love Maxine.
I love Maxine too, but she's not a very nice child.
Well, let's not give away too much. I mean, she's a bit of a femme fatale in the classic form.
Excellent. But I mean, the thing is, she's alive and she could come back.
She could come back, absolutely.
Thank
and we meet some other wonderful women characters in the second and third book as well.
Okay. Now, though he appears, gets into the story mostly through his phone calls, talk about Sergeant Mills Hopkins.
I love Mills Hopkins. He's like the anchor of the whole thing. He's the guy who brought Jack Palms in when there was a weird domestic dispute going on in Sausalito and got his face on the cover of the tabloids in a bad way a few years back. And now he's the one who's basically telling Jack, either you figure out what's going on with this drug deal and bring me the big drug dealer, or you're going to be the one in jail.
So that I can have one big arrest and go willy-nilly into happy retirement.
Exactly.
That's known as a good cop bribe. You know that? That really, really is. Well, Jack Wakes Up is nonstop. It's a lot of fun, and it's something that, stick your feet in the sand and have a good time.
Absolutely.
Jack Wakes Up, a novel by Seth Harwood. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.